What if time doesn't move forward like an arrow? What if it folds just like a fabric? What if we can see the future without even meaning to? In the year 1935, one of the Britain's most respected airmen might have just done that. This is the story of Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard, and the moment he flew into something no pilot should have ever seen. Victor Goddard was born in the year 1897. He later on in his life studied in Royal Naval College and became naval aviator during the World War I. During the World War II, he served as Chief of Royal Air Force Intelligence, short RAF. This is how I am going to call it throughout further in the video. And he played a key role in the Operation Fortitude. So that was a deception that helped to secure a D-Day and liberation of the Western Europe. He wasn't a dreamer, and this is very important for today's story. He was logical, he was analytical. All of his colleagues described him as grounded and composed. He flew a Hawker Hart, a two-seater biplane used for light bombing and reconnaissance. It had an open cockpit, maximum speed of around 185 miles per hour. And to paint the picture of him better, here's a quote from his colleague, and it says,
Goddard had the kind of mind you couldn't fool, cool under pressure, not prone to fantasy.
And yet, one experience could shake this image forever. And this is what we are going to talk about in today's story. In the year 1935, then, Wing Commander Goddard was flying from RAF Andover in southern England to Edinburgh. It was a routine navigation flight, used to log flight hours and check on military facilities. On the way north, he passed over Drem airfield in East Lothian, Scotland. And here's a little side note. I have noticed your comments about my pronunciation of places. Please do not come after me. I'm trying my best. If I made a mistake, you surely can point that out in the comments. I would be very happy to know how it's actually pronounced or how I have mispronounced, but this is how it is. Sometimes I do that, and it's not because I'm disrespectful. So now back to the story about the Drem airfield that Goddard was passing over. So it had been a functional air base during the World War I, but now it was derelict. Buildings were crumbling. Everything was overgrown. There were even cows walking across the runways. Nothing was happening there. Goddard just checked on it, noted it, and moved on. On his return journey, something really strange happened. Sudden storm overtook his aircraft. Violent winds, pounding rain. His plane was thrown off the course. He struggled to maintain the altitude. And then the storm parted. The sunlight returned. The wind calmed down. And below him was again Drem airfield, but not as he remembered it. The airfield now was operational. Remember, before that, I told you it didn't work. It had been working during the World War I, and now it was like overgrown, abandoned. Now the buildings were freshly painted. The runway, pristine clean. 4 bright yellow planes were standing there, and there were mechanics working in blue overalls. What happened? From Goddard's memoir, Flight Towards Reality, there is this quote.
I saw mechanics in blue overalls working on yellow aircraft. None of this made sense. No such planes existed in the RAF, and no crew wore blue.
Goddard then circled around the airfield in disbelief. The details were sharp, vivid, real, and then, suddenly, the storm returned. And all of a sudden, all of the things that he saw there disappeared after the storm again. Goddard didn't speak about that during that time. It just seemed too strange. And also he was like a highly respectable man, and talking about paranormal things in that position wouldn't put him in a very good spot. But then 4 years passed. It was already 1939. And he realized that all of the things that he saw on that day for that brief moment actually had come true. I will continue my story shortly. That's just a little announcement. First, you might have been seeing a little bit of ads on my videos. Yes, if that happens, please do not angry at me. Do not get angry on YouTube. Just be happy for me. It took me a long way to get there to finally be able to earn a little bit money from the YouTube. Anyways, if you feel like these ads are still annoying, if they appear, of course, then there's always a chance to subscribe to my Patreon, where there are a couple of tiers, and two of them include seeing my video without ads and actually earlier than other people here on YouTube. Just a little announcement, just saying, do what you want with this information. Let's go back to the story. So, Drem airfield. What did Goddard realize? Well, as I said, 4 years passed, and with the outbreak of World War II, it was decided to reopen Drem airfield again. It was repaired, it went under different renewals, so it was now operating. And another really important detail is that previously silver color RAF planes were now painted in strikingly yellow color. Rings a bell, right? In addition to that, RAF ground crew now started to wear new uniforms, and these uniforms were basically blue overalls. Again, rings a bell. So everything that he actually saw in the year 1935 was now a fact. The uniforms, the colors of the plane, the overall colors, all of that now was real. Everything that he saw in details during that brief moment. So what happened 4 years before? Was it like a time slip 4 years into future? This is when Goddard realized that maybe it is time to start to talk about this and the other experiences. Yes, you heard me correctly. He had experienced even something more than this. This Drem case is not the only paranormal thing that Goddard had experienced. In fact, it actually happened even before this Drem case, this, if you might call it, time slip. And this story is actually even more spookier. It was year 1919. World War I had ended, and the sense of relief mixed with lingering sorrow hung in the air at the Royal Air Force Base at HMS Daedalus, a naval air station in Cranwell, Lincolnshire, England. Victor Goddard was only a young officer then, and his squadron had gathered for a formal group photograph to mark the end of the service together. The photo was taken outside on the steps of a hangar. The men lined up in rows, wearing their uniforms with pride, many of them smiling, others serious. A routine moment, a memory to capture their time in the skies during one of the history's deadliest conflicts. But when the photograph was developed, something was wrong with it. There, in the back row, partially behind another airman, was a face that should not have been there. It appears blurry, almost translucent, but unmistakably human. The squadron members were shocked. They all recognized the face. His name was Freddy Jackson, a mechanic in the unit, and now the most craziest part, who had died a couple of days before this photo had been taken. He had been killed in an accident. He walked into a spinning propeller of an aircraft, and his funeral was held just a couple of days before. And yet here he was in this group photo, smiling faintly as if he had simply shown up for a duty just one last time. The Jackson spirit, unaware of the fact that it had died, had joined the photo as he would normally do without even realizing that he had died. Other sources allege that this accident with the propeller and him dying actually happened on that spot where the squadron was taking the photo, and his spirit that had died in this like violent way was lingering around in that area. You know, like the story, if you die a violent death, then your spirit just wanders around and cannot find peace. So that was why he was there in that picture, because he was still there. So these are the theories why the face was there. Now years passed and it's already 1935, and Goddard then experienced this Drem time slip. I bet there was already a lot happening inside of him after he experienced this second paranormal thing, but he knew that he couldn't speak up about this because like people would look at him as probably someone crazy. I suppose that he noted all of this that he had experienced to himself, confirmed to himself that paranormal and these mysterious things do exist, and decided to keep all of that to himself. That is until later. So yeah, two events, so what? Well, actually, there was even more than that, because after this time slip, something else happened in his life. So it was actually during the 1940s. And here's the story. The Second World War was drawing to a close, but the world was far from peace. China was a land of fracture, devastated by years of Japanese occupation and shaken by civil war. Into this wounded yet ancient country came Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard, one of the British Royal Air Force's most decorated officers, assigned on an official business. But not everything that he encountered in China would be military related. One evening, he was invited to meet a reclusive Chinese scholar, a man known locally as a master of ancient esoteric traditions. Goddard, ever curious mind, and already touched by unusual events in his life, accepted this invitation. Allegedly, he was taken to an old crumbling house in the older quarters of Beijing. There, by candlelight and the scent of burning herbs, the old scholar spoke of time, soul journeys, and the veil between worlds. He claimed that through proper methods, like meditation, trance, and ancient visualization techniques, one could see beyond the time into realms where past, present, and future overlapped. What happened next? Goddard really didn't detail that much. We can assume that maybe he surrendered to these herbs, to these ancient methods and meditations that were offered by possibly, I don't know, like a Chinese shaman or, I don't know, guru or whoever he was, because like his name was also not published or mentioned anywhere. So there is just like this story. But what is allegedly known is that Goddard would hint that he had visions during that time. They were vivid and they were powerful. He described seeing aerial attacks unlike anything yet known and cities in flames as though glimpsing the destructive future of war. He saw machines and intelligences that didn't belong to any known era. Some even suggest that the cities of flames he saw were the future Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, allegedly, when Goddard woke up from this trance or meditation, call it whatever, because we don't know, this Chinese scholar told him calmly, and I quote, "You did not imagine, you remembered, but from the future." Now, but this is not the only weird story from this visit in Asia. So Goddard was allegedly attending more of these like dinner parties with officials participating and in one of these parties, actually, one of his RAF colleagues told Goddard a strange dream that he had just the night before. And in that dream, he saw actually a plane crash. He saw a plane crash of a plane where Goddard was a pilot. And then he said that this plane would crash because there was like some kind of atmospheric icing problem, and Goddard would die by crashing on like a beach that had a lot of pebbles and there were mountains around. It is so eerie because this colleague saw everything into details up to the things like the plane model, how many passengers were there on the plane, and also, of course, the detailed description of the place where the plane would crash. So he actually saw in the dream Goddard's death. Okay, you might say just a dream. Well, this gets even crazier. Interestingly enough, the same evening, Goddard had to fly to Japan, Tokyo. And on that plane, he was accompanied by 2 men and a woman, just like in that dream. And just like in the colleague's dream, the plane during the flight had to make an emergency landing due to some icing problems. Okay. They had to land on a Japanese island called Sado. Believe it or not, but the place where they landed had a pebbled beach and the mountains around. The only difference from that dream was that nobody died during that landing. This crazy story afterwards was published in the Saturday Evening Post on May 12, year 1951, and even inspired the creation of a movie called The Night My Number Came Up. Anyways, to sum up, was this dream about Goddard some kind of prediction? Did he manage to save himself from a death that somebody had predicted in their dreams? Anyways, in the year 1951, Goddard retired from the RAF holding the rank of Air Marshal. He had served with distinction in both World War I and World War II. After retirement, he was also knighted, so now he was Sir Victor Goddard. As I already mentioned, he was known as a man who was not prone to fantasies. He was like really stable, really reliable, and exemplary soldier in short. But the retirement, as it seems, opened a new path and new opportunities to him. He developed a deep interest in the paranormal, especially consciousness, time perception, and extrasensory phenomena. It seems like he was now ready to talk about what he could not talk about so widely while he was in the military. During the 1960s, he started to publicly speak about topics like time slips, extrasensory perception or ESP, and ghosts. Most importantly, because he had the experience with all of that before in his life. In the year 1975, he published a book that was called Flight Towards Reality, which was more like a philosophical memoir. In the book, he talks about time slips, ESP, consciousness beyond the physical, and the possibility of precognition. He revisits the famous time slip at Drem in the year 1935 and other mysterious moments. He also argues that reality is deeper and more complex than mental science admits. So in his book, he would touch upon really interesting topics, and here are some of them in brief. For example, ideas that time is not linear. Consciousness can sometimes perceive the past or future, and I quote,
Time is not necessarily sequential. It may be that we can occasionally dip into the future as into the past.
He would also talk about things like that beings are spiritual as well as physical, and then that the death is not the end, meaning, yes, the body dies, but the spirit continues to live. And I quote,
The soul is not born with the body, nor does it die with it. Man is a spirit who happens to be temporally embodied.
Also, as an aviator, he saw flying as a literal and symbolic act of the transcendence, rising above the earthbound consciousness. And I quote,
Flight is a symbol of the spirit, of rising above the limitations of the material world.
And he also mentions that science and spirituality must be integrated, so this would help us to truly understand the universe. All of this, of course, sounds fascinating and very interesting and has a place to be. Even I have read a lot of philosophical books in relation to yoga, and I can see some things that are mirroring there. So it's fine, but still, outside of that, people would still raise eyebrows when Goddard would tell about his experience with the time slip. And also, of course, let's remember there's this photograph with the soldier and also the story about the dream and also the story with his experiences with this Chinese scholar. Let's look at these stories with a critical eye and maybe try to analyze them a little bit. Goddard may have misremembered events, especially since he spoke about the time slip many years after it happened. As we all remember, he did not come out with the story immediately, not until the 1960s. He may have flown over Drem later, seen the updated airfield, and misattributed the memory to the 1935 flight. This is a form of confabulation where real events get merged or retimed in the mind. Can this be the case? Some researchers also suggest that this vision could have been caused by stress, fatigue, lack of oxygen during the flight, because all of that could cause hallucinations or altered perception. So, as we remember, Goddard was flying through a storm under turbulent conditions, and disorientation in that flight can easily lead also to visual misinterpretations. And personally, for me, the last thing that kind of gives a little bit of suspicious mindset about this time slip event is the fact that he didn't write anything down after this event happened. Of course, I'm not saying he should have gone to his military elders and tell that, oh, I just had this time slip or whatever it was. Of course, they would think that he's crazy and not allow him to fly anymore. But I mean, there are no entries in diaries that could prove that, yeah, he had written down during that time about that experience. There are also, of course, no photographs because who would take a photo camera during a routine military flight? But there are also no radar logs or any supporting testimonies, anyone, for example, to whom he had told this story. So there is nothing. All of this story is basically based on his own, story, the things that he told that he experienced. We already talked about the things why he would probably not do it with officials, but he might have friends or I don't know, telling them in a bar, you know what happened, or just a couple of days after this event, he would write down, oh my God, this happened. I should write it down. Maybe in the future I can tell it to someone. I don't know. For me, it seems suspicious. Let me know in comments if it is the same for you, because now we are basically relying on his words. Again, I am not saying that I do not believe the Goddard story. I'm saying that there are some pros and cons to this story. And people who are into paranormal still refer to this case as one of the best documented civilian time slips. I would argue with the part documented, okay? Yes, we have a person to whom we can trust, who has an amazing reputation, but, And let's be honest, people who will always be after these documented evidence will always doubt stories like that. And I understand them. I mean, for example, if we simplify this story, very simplify, that would be me going out now on the street, totally empty street. And let's say I would have this time slip and I would see that on this empty street, there is a supermarket, a huge one with a lot of people with some shops that I have never seen those names. Okay. 2 years pass and a real supermarket, with all of these shops, would appear. And I would come out and say 2 years ago, I walked that street and I saw that supermarket there. I was in a time slip. Who would believe me? Nobody. But for example, if I was some kind of respectful military with a really good background and I would come out with this story after 2 years, people would start to listen to me just because I'm respected. And I would never be considered as someone who could invent things like that. So yeah, so there is this controversy. A story that Goddard allegedly had in China with this man who helped him to go into this trance. And then he had these vivid dreams about the future. What's with that? Here's a critical look at it. We know Goddard was stationed in China and possibly in Japan in the year 1940s. If you have some other information, do share it in the comments. But there is no official record, as far as I know, or diary entry or a direct quote from Goddard himself where he clearly describes this kind of shamanic trance experience in Asia. Critics in general argue that this story has likely grown out of Goddard's persona, and that this was like a legend that was later built by authors who were trying to connect Goddard's belief to like Eastern mysticism. You know, like they would probably be writing an article or making a video about him, and then they would just create this legend so that just he looks more mysterious and more crazy, like, because he was talking about these dreams and everything like that. And it would just make sense to have this kind of story that tells, yes, like he had this experience with these dreams and these dreams came true. I don't know, like that's one of the theories. Now, as I mentioned, he did believe in ESP. He believed in precognition and spiritual reality. But as far as I know, he never publicly told a story about some kind of Chinese scholar or spiritualist who had led him into this trance. And he never described all of these details that I told you before, like, you know, that he saw the future, the wars and stuff like that. So I didn't find, and also the sources say that this had never came out from his mouth in any of his speeches. If you had some other sources that would confirm that, do share them in the comments, because that would like change a lot. So in short, I could conclude that these ideas may reflect Goddard's worldview, but not necessarily an actual event. But maybe it is a story that was once told by him, you know, like at the bar to a friend, and then someone picked it up and distributed it. It's also an option. The same actually applies to the story of where his colleague saw a dream and he landed on the Japanese island. No official military or personal records corroborate the emergency landing or the mystical encounter on Saddle Island. This story with this like emergency landing on an island with Goddard on it actually had a different way. Yes, there was a dinner party. Yes, there was a colleague who told about the dream involving a plane crash, and Goddard indeed went on a flight after that, but he didn't go over Japan as the story tells. He went over Scotland. The aircraft faced bad weather, ice, and danger, but landed safely. Goddard then wrote a story in detail for a Saturday Evening Post, and the article was called Clairvoyant Warning, and it was published in the year 1951. The idea was just to show how prophetic dream nearly foretold a flight disaster. Tiny detail about this article that was published in the year 1951. It does not actually mention the author of it. And it was kind of historically assumed that it must have been Goddard because he speaks about this case in detail in the book that he published later in the year 1975. But was he the author? It is still unknown. It is kind of just assumed. Maybe he used this article as an inspiration just to talk about dreams that can predict the future. What happened next is that this article gained a lot of attention. It became popular, you know, like because it was something unusual for the people and they started to talk about it. And later in the year 1955, it became the basis of a British film that I already mentioned that was called The Night My Number Came Up, starring Michael Redgrave. The film was fictionalized, but closely kind of followed the real encounter. Like including the flight over the Scotland, not Japan, as it was said initially. But once again, one important part is missing. There are no logbooks, diaries, evidence of this story actually to be true. It is all from Goddard's word, so believe it or not, I guess. And remember, he is a respected knighted air marshal, no doubt about him, but people crave real evidence still. One of the things that I still want to mention, though, is this feeling that Sir Victor Goddard did not make a big business out of his stories. He didn't tour paranormal circuits or exaggerate in later interviews. He simply described what he saw, what he felt, and he left it for us to believe or not. And he said, I quote,
Maybe the real mystery is not me, but the mind.
But what do Goddard himself say to these people who still doubt his experiences and the things that he's saying because, you don't have a really good proof? Well, he says that these experiences changed his life. They changed him. And I quote,
I do not claim proof, only experience. What I have witnessed may be beyond conventional explanation, but I offer it as a sincere testimony, leaving judgment to others.
I truly like that he's not being pushy about this and not saying that I saw it, this happened, just take it into account, this is truth, just accept it. Like, he tells something that he allegedly experienced, what is his thoughts about that, and you think what you want. Here it is, I'm just giving it to you. Goddard has remained an intriguing person throughout the time. His experiences are still discussed in articles, videos, different documentaries, especially in the light of time travel, which to me personally is also a topic that I'm really interested into and I would like to learn more about it. While some are totally skeptical, others are interested in what he had to say and start to question the real nature of time and possibly of the time slips. When Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard came forward with stories of time slips and prophetic dreams, he didn't expect applause. He was respected for his discipline, not for paranormal claims. So what did the scientific community think about all of this? They mostly stayed silent. To this day, no major physicist or academic psychologist has endorsed Goddard's time slip or dream flight story. At least not that I have found. But in the world of parapsychology, Goddard is a different kind of figure. Not a crank, but a credible witness. Even among aviation historians, Goddard holds a special place. As one of the highest-ranking officers to ever speak openly about strange, unexplainable experiences, he's often respected not for proof, but for his honesty. He lived a long and thoughtful life, and he peacefully passed away in the year 1987 at the age of 93. And perhaps in the world of mystery, that's the most honest kind of testimony we can get. Not a man chasing fame or fiction, but simply one who saw something and had the courage to tell us. And on that note, I would like to invite you, Lighthosters, to share your opinions about Sir Victor Goddard, his experiences, and all of the things that he experienced. Was it a glitch in memory? Was it a time slip or something haunting him from the past since he had experienced the war? What are your thoughts? And of course, if you like stories like these, please make sure that you have subscribed, that you have written a comment or press those likes. This really helps to promote my channel. And also, of course, keep your eyes to the sky or be very cautious wherever you go. You never know. There might be things that you might experience and that you cannot explain. And if you do manage to experience something, you might also send me an email or something just tell me. Maybe I can share this on my video. I don't know. That's an option. And also, of course, I'm just reminding that I also have a Patreon right here. That being said, shout out to my elite Patreon, David Craig. Hi. Hope you have a lovely day and I hope you loved today's story. So if you also want to have a shout out, you can have it. So I have a couple of tiers on Patreon. The elite tier gets the shout out every single video. The middle section, they get a shout out on the first time when they subscribe. There are also some other benefits, so just go check out and see what works with you. If not, even just a simple comment and a subscription to my YouTube channel helps. I really love you all Lighthousers because we like shedding a light to some really good stuff here. I'm really grateful that I am here talking to you. And actually, I am staying here because of you. You really motivate me to be more curious and share more stories with you. Oh, of course, I promised. Here's the expert's opinion.
Now, as always, we're gonna ask the question to the expert. See, she's taking things seriously. She's dressing up, making cookies. So what do you think about this case? Was it a time slip, Vasya? Vasya?